Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, greetings wherever and whenever you are. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dee. I am so grateful that you are here. So, welcome to the Friday broadcast where we're going to look at the weekend's astrology. Just unpack it a little bit, give ourselves an idea of what to expect. And we really are starting to prepare not only to end a cycle that started with our new moon in Capricorn here at the very beginning of January and the very beginning of the calendar year of 2022, but also we're about to come into an Aquarius new moon. That also is the beginning of the Chinese New Year and the year of the water tiger. So I have been diligently recording and preparing all of the new moon forecasts videos for all of the signs. They will be posted soon. And if this is your first time here, you're not subscribed yet to this channel, either on YouTube or BitChute, this is a really good opportunity to do so. So you know when your signs video is posted for this new moon. And we are looking specifically in those reports at the new moon up to the full moon. And it's just, wow, we're all about to go through something together over the next couple of weeks. And of course, we've been talking about this mid-February time now for a long time, through definitely from the summer and certainly since the beginning of this current eclipse cycle, which started with our Pleiadian full moon lunar eclipse back in November and the Sagittarian solar eclipse. So that is a process that is extending out into May, where we start another eclipse cycle, and we have another Pleiadian lunar eclipse, except opposite this time. So we've been talking about this mid-February point for a while, and this full moon is not going to disappoint. So you're going to want to check that out. But in the meantime, let's just talk about the weekend and how everyone is doing and what everyone is feeling, because there is so much happening, and the necessity for instituting some sort of grounding practice and embodiment is so it cannot be overstated at this point. And this is why I utilize the image of the tree pose, or Vrikshasana, for today's thumbnail, because it's gonna be necessary to maintain a sense of rootedness and stability and flexibility at the same time. So we'll go over, there's some pretty big astrology for this weekend as the moon is moving into her balsamic or dark phase. So it's not a great time to really initiate any kind of new action. We are finishing up a lunar cycle that started in Capricorn. It's going to end in Capricorn into Aquarius. And, Black Moon Lilith is actually in Cancer this weekend in her transit. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too, because we're going to revisit the star Sirius and the Sirian nature, and just kind of revisit that dynamic of Cancer and Capricorn, because that's the axis that this lunar cycle was developing across. So we want to make sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves. And it's really easy to do that. We want to allow these cycles to play out naturally, and for us to acknowledge them and to honor them, and to allow every piece of that cycle to come to its conclusion in a very fulfilled way, and not impede any of these things. So this is why with a balsamic or a dark moon, right, it's getting down to its least illumination or luminosity before the exact conjunction with the sun. It's a great time to reflect. Now, Venus is going to station direct this weekend. The sun is going to be in a square to Uranus on Sunday. I mean, this is so much maybe clearly agitation and irritation, a lot of ego struggle, some unexpected outbursts perhaps with the sun square Uranus, and considering that it's so close to the Aquarian new moon, the sun is, and Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius. I mean, there is some electric energy that is just is so palpable all around us, right? It's like static electricity all around us. And so Venus stationing direct, I feel like, is so it's so connected to this imagery of the tree and the tree pose, and this did come out in one of the transmissions this week, the daily medicine transmissions this week, in terms of an imagery, and it's just something to keep in mind in terms of being firmly planted and rooted, but also pliable and flexible and able to move with the winds of change, and maybe even have to sustain some sort of lightning strike, and acknowledge how even that is ultimately going to create space for something new to grow, right? And that's a very difficult thing to accept or to live as a human through an experience like that. But that is part of the larger natural progression of things. So let's check in with the chat here and see what's going on. I do feel much better now that I've made the decision to just be a tree for now. I would say that that's a really smart and wise choice. And hopefully I'd like to later today go over some technical aspects of Vrikshasana and tree pose, and being able to embody these experiences in a very physical way is a great way to bridge our nervous system with our experience. So I feel a lot better too, actually. There was a grand purge, and just feeling, Seth and I both feeling like we got hit by a truck yesterday. Now, of course, the monkey caper is so close by that, it's easy to get pulled into paranoia about things. And I have a family member that got sick. And these are all the things you would never even think twice about 2, 3, 4 years ago. You just be like, oh, yeah, something's going around. And now everything is on the table to be scrutinized and to be investigated, which is very interesting because that's a very Scorpio type of thing. And this is a part of our karmic mastery at a soul level now that the South Node is here. So we feel motivated and familiar in some ways with this experience of deep investigation. But being the tree is a much more Taurus and Pleiadian type of experience, and it's no less valid just because it is, and perfect just the way it is. And so this is something that we could all stand to embrace, I think, right now, especially with what I'm looking at this weekend. So I'm going to actually, let's go back. I want to show you the full I want to show you first the full image of this. And in the description box below, there's a link to this image and the person, the artist, and then opportunity to order and support their work and to order a print. So that's going to be available in the description box below. That's the first link that is available there. But here's the full piece here where you can see the individual in the tree pose, the root system seamlessly coming out of, their contact with the planet. And this is just a really pleasing and beautiful painting that really encompasses the full expression of tree pose and what it can be for us right now. And it's very Venusian because Venus is in Capricorn and she is stationing direct this weekend, and she's done a very deep inventory. It's kind of like a tree that's been in hibernation for the winter, and now she's going to start turning on again and accessing her root systems and allowing for the growth process to turn back on, especially when it comes to not only herself, but the network of trees and the ecosystem as a whole, right? Because she's in Capricorn. So this, I think, is going to, be a great way to handle with Venus being direct in this square, as we're going to see between Uranus and Aquarius, or Sun in Aquarius. Like I said, agitation and unexpected outbursts and just all kinds of fuckery could be expected with a transit like this, and especially with the Sun in Aquarius and Uranus being involved in Taurus, no less. So Venus has a lot to offer in terms of our sensitivity to the world around us. For everybody, I feel like, has their own relationship to each of these planets and how they express themselves. And I have found that for me personally, I tend to have very physical experiences with Venus transits in my body, right? But it could have something to do with your relationships or something in terms of your material assets or goods or the types of materials that you use in order to create. These are all things that Venus will be responsible for, but it's very much in a sensitivity to the material aspects and resources that we use to create and to create. I mean, that's really what we're here to do, is to be creative beings. So Venus manages the resources in which we do that. And like I said, she in Capricorn, it's not about just the resources at an individual level, but the way they all work together in communion, right? Like a network of trees that actually do talk to each other. If you've ever read that book, or if you're familiar with the book, The Hidden Life of Trees, maybe I can post a link to it on Telegram later if you aren't familiar with it. All about how there's the network under the soil is where they're all communicating and helping each other. And part of where Venus is stationing direct is very close to the new moon cycle. So we're kind of going back in some ways and revisiting in our own sensitivity and in connection to value and worth. At a social level, at a collective level, at an ecosystem level, how it all works, and explore how it all works. And also too, with that exploration and that knowledge, to just as easily be able to accept the larger process of the cycle of death and rebirth, right? The fire that through the forest is a destructive force, but the fire through the forest, naturally, right, maybe from a lightning strike perhaps, is going to allow for a new fertile ground to be created, right? This is what happens when there are natural forest fires, and when it is completely natural and in harmony and in communion with the needs of those ecosystems to be cleared out, basically, and purified, then this is something that we can see in a positive way, that there is rebirth, that there is emergence, there is growth and transmutation as a result of this release of energy, even though it's a destructive force. So there's a remembrance, and there is something very much in our own embodiment and in the material resource realm that we all are sensitive to, that we are sensitive to that and how it all fits together. And this movement is this stationing direct of Venus is how we, come to terms and wrap up this cycle that started with the sun and moon together at the very same place, essentially where Venus is moving direct. So being the tree in this instance is going to allow for a really strong connection to the process, the natural process, because it is stable again, but there are things happening, right? There are biochemical things happening in the tree, especially as the tree is waking up. There's a lot of waking up energy in the body that is coming along with this Venus stationing direct this weekend. So I just wanted to show you that as we go through this, that you can utilize this image and you have access to it if you really like it and want to support the artist who created it. You can find that link below, because that's what we're here to do. And just kind of get an idea, like I said, there's Sirius and Canis Major. We will definitely be talking about that at some point during this broadcast. So how are we doing here? Okay, great. So yeah, let us know in the chat how you're feeling. If you are experiencing any kind of agitation, any worry, anxiety, if you're just feeling this palpable tension surrounding you that you're like, wow, something is about to pop. Well, there are some very distinct astrological aspects for this, and that are being reflected back to us out in the world in certain types of events and information. So let's start with today. So the moon is in Sag, right? This is where we kind of get our, get some meaning back into our personal lives and a sense of big picture value. And this is the energy or the fire or the heat that really instigates or catalyzes the transmutational reaction, right? This is the higher mind comes from understanding, and understanding comes from synthesis rather than, it's one thing to have a dialectic. It's another to analyze it, which is what you do in the sixth house in Virgo. It's the understanding of the whole picture when you've managed to create a new perspective that happens in Sag. So when the moon is here, we are feeling very strong within ourselves and in our belief systems, right? This is where our strength, it's coming from the belief systems and the understanding and the higher mind. And we can also just very easily tap into the culture's, meaning and value systems as well with the moon in Sag. Now, this also means when the moon is in anywhere, that there's a potential to always tap into more than just yourself, depending on where your emotional boundaries are, what you're doing in your dreamscape, and what your subconscious is exposed to. This is really important to consider, especially the role the actual physical moon may have been playing in some sort of, Death Star type of, or any kind of frequency modulation that is based somewhere. Let's see how many bots come into the chat now that I've said those things. I do really love the image. Having wild dreams. I woke up screaming 2 nights ago. I'm good with letting it go in dreams and working to be anchored and calm. And I love the tree image. Wow, I haven't had a nightmare in a while, but if this is a time for those types of dreams to be having, I'm sorry that was your experience, and you are good with letting it go. So, and working to be anchored and calm. Yeah, I got that vibe from you big time. You handle yourself. That is for sure, my friend. I was more stressed yesterday before my friend's vax, but so far he's okay for now. I can understand being stressed about that. The moon in Sag always lifts me up to see more and be more optimistic. Absolutely. I really love a moon in Sag, right? It really does lift us and emboldens us and gives us a sense of strength. So yeah, you guys really love that image. I would recommend just clicking on the link and checking out what kind of prints are available from this artist. I'm thinking about, ordering it myself because it's a really good, it's a good reminder, right? So let's look here at our chart here for today, my friends. So we are the 28th. This is January 28th, 2022. So there's a couple main things that are going to happen today while our optimistic moon is in Sagittarius. And there's there's 2 main transits happening today besides the moon making, it's going to be in a square to Neptune, so mutable square, and also will eventually, and a square to Pallas Athena, who is past Neptune right now in these last degrees of Pisces. This is an interesting strategic moment here. And this is like total surrender and starting to, the end of Pisces is this like pulling apart and differentiation. It's like the soul coming into the newly formed body at the moment of conception or whatever. Everybody's got a different opinion about when that happens, right? I've heard it all in terms of when the soul enters the body, but that is, you start to differentiate and out of the collective unconscious or the connection to source, and then you start to come back into a differentiated form as a new seed, right? Because this is what we are doing to propagating our existence, and source is experiencing every new iteration itself through every new iteration. So it's getting interesting with Pallas Athena here. But the big transits that are happening today, number one, is that the sun is actually going to come into the 9th to 10th degree of Aquarius and is going to sextile Chiron. And I talked about this last week too, and this is a pretty remarkable opportunity here to really get out from under some imposed identity wounds or inner child wounds, or to see some triggers in yourself and maybe other people in a whole new way that will also simultaneously allow for each of us to transcend our own triggers and our own more wounded healer responsibilities that we feel with this sextile. So there is a strong ability, right, with this when it happens. This is, let's look at actually, and the other thing that's going to happen today at the very same time, actually, let's go forward so I can show you, is that Mercury retrograde is going to meet Pluto again. So this will be the second time, and that means that Mercury will meet Pluto again, a third time in its being direct. So with these two, really consider, number one, that some Mercury with Pluto like this, especially in a retrograde, is a really great time, if you are in a position to do so, to go very deep psychoanalytically, right? You can really start to unpack and get at some very deep, raw, powerful dynamics within the self and actually work through them, think about them, use your analysis to or your capacity for analysis, psychoanalysis, which I know is very Freudian, but, it's the idea that you can start to unravel through your cognition, these really deep patterns. And you could actually see this as some kind of offshoot or comparable to something like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? This is allowing for that. Now, when we're talking about Capricorn, we are talking about not just the individual, but we are talking about the socio-political structure or the ecosystem as a whole that we're part of, and the unfolding of it, the actual material aspect of the ecosystem and how it functions, or of the political system and how it functions, or the economy and how it functions. Pick whatever you want to wrap your mind around. The Capricorn aspect is the physical unfolding of these institutional structures. So, but you can also allow for the mental processes as an individual construct to really get deeply into those dynamics that are ultimately going through a change in metamorphosis by destroying that which is ready to be destroyed, right? Or to allow what's ready to find its end to be taken and, again, transformed. Because this is really what creation is just transforming energy into new structures. Now, this also, and remember here, I'm getting ahead of myself, remember that Mercury is retrograde, and we are talking about the pathway of ascension, or the upreaching of the individual consciousness based on the pathway already laid out by previous masters, teachers, religious leaders, okay? Those who in the past that have been in a position of authority and leadership, that have already created the pathway up to the shrine. Now, Pluto is, just it's like a landslide, right? Or an avalanche or something. It's just destroying those pathways for what, so that you have to make new ones, or you have to acknowledge that maybe that wasn't the pathway you wanted to go. For whatever reason, Pluto is the destructive element. So Mercury here also very mentally and cognitively addressing, observing, especially internally, really deeply internally, addressing these things, and also too reviewing it, possibly questioning it, proofreading, right? These are all Mercury retrograde types of activities. But I do feel like that there will be a deep stirring that is not very obvious yet of some very serious secrets, right? I mean, that's the thing about Pluto and Mercury together too is that which is often hidden in the shadows and in the darkness will find its light. It will come to light, right? Mercury is a symbol that represents the ability to travel at the speed of light, to travel information. And Mercury not only rides that information or holds that information, but also analyzes that information in Virgo. So the information is about the ecosystem, which is about the economy, the institutions as a whole, and specifically like what is going down on the very bottom that nobody sees, that you don't get away from, right? Pluto has the final word. All will be revealed. So, when Mercury comes back to this point, which we'll talk more about in the forecasts for the new moon, the sign forecasts, then I think it'll be a lot more obvious. But in the meantime, this happening today, along with the sun having this sextile to Chiron, and the sun in a position of Aquarius that is really emphasizing the importance of addressing human beings as they are, as opposed to a screen in which you project your stuff or something onto, right? That they are just nothing more than there for us to project onto. When we step away from that and acknowledge people for who they are and be very realistic about it, we can see the roles that not only we played and play, but the roles that other people play. And again, it allows us to let go of all of these identities that are not us, but we embrace anyway out of a sense of guilt or shame with Chiron. But we can see this all in a whole new set of images now, a wider scope, a more abstract, instead of like being so emotionally like influenced and aroused by these triggers, right? These triggers of our wounding and shame and guilt. And so there is incredible opportunity here, and it's also going to, I think, at the same time, it's like literally at the same time, right? It just passed, just like 4 minutes before the sun was in a direct sextile, and these two are directly, and this is by the end of tonight, right? So we have all day to go through these moon transits. Oh, and look at this. The moon is at the galactic center, and these not only are, this is an Arcturian starseed marking, well, it's pretty Arcturian and Orion as well, and Andromedan, right? There's 3 different, well, I would say definitely Orion and definitely Andromedan, and not in necessarily the best, right? Sagittarius is opposite of where Orion is. And so synthesis, alchemical transmutation, understanding, big picture, this is not Orion's starseed territory, because when you do that, somebody comes into control and is in charge of a collective narrative. Then there's nobody to fight, right, necessarily, within yourselves. And the Orion starseeds in particular live, their power really comes from being able to manage the space of ideas and information and the dialectic, because it allows for a competitive process. Anyway, that's a starseed conversation. But what I am saying here is that this is where the moon is, at the galactic center, while these massive events are happening. So by the end of the day, either late tonight, very early tomorrow morning, if you're like if you're in Europe or in not in North America specifically, you are likely going to find like some sort of aha moment here that will, likely be the result of some sort of very deep, dark, very raw, very hidden, very shadowy elements of our ecosystem, of our institutions, whatever, right? The Capricornian matrix, starting to become a little bit more accessible to the mind. Maybe not fully, right? Or maybe we're going back over information that we've already engaged with the first time that Mercury came and met Pluto. The thing that's different is this sextile with the sun and Chiron here is an opportunity to really come out of something and really move past old identities and to forgive other people too, right? When you can see that you have been projecting onto others your ideals and your, all of your shit basically onto other people as if they are nothing more than a screen, you forgive yourself, you in that instance as well, you also get to step out of all of the imposed ideas and identities that have kept us locked into acting in this way in the first place, right? The minute we start seeing people as people, boy, our hearts open big time. And this is an incredibly potent moment, but it's going to, I feel like, be part of whatever this is. So knowing where these things are happening in your chart is a pretty good idea or indication of what area of life it's most likely going to impact. So for me, for instance, as an Aquarius person, you're looking at some really significant 12th house karma stuff coming up in this realm, and then first house to third house with Aries, freeing the mind, basically, when we just, as an Aquarius, being able to identify ourselves as a person, identify others as people, right? And finding, sun in your first house. This is just a little kind of like a side astro lesson is, you really are you are shining very brightly as who you are, and really attracting other people to you because, you're so bright and you're so just illuminated in general, and your sense of self is very much wrapped up in this expression of self at the same time, which is, having the sun in the first house. So when this is in a sextile to, Chiron, being in the third house for Aquarius for a while now, and will be for a while, especially depending on where your house cusps actually lie in your natal chart, you'll find that, for the Aquarius person, it's the mind. It is the literal mind that has been clouded or influenced by these identities and these concepts of the wounded healer, right? And anyway, so that's just a way that you can understand, and this, you can use the horoscope forecasts that for these new and full moons to hone that in a little bit and get an idea of what areas these transits are going to impact. And then you have the moon at the galactic center. So, and they're all going to be like feeling at this time of like, okay, I feel really strong and really sure of what I want to project out into the world into some sort of form, right? I am 100% like in the flow and the vibe, and I get it. I understand it so much that I can actually craft it into something physical. So, I think that I know that things are building and there's a tension that's building, and by the end of today, there will be some type of release of that. It won't be the only one, but it'll be very necessary, because what we're going to find is as the moon gets darker, it's going to come into Capricorn. So you have all this Capricorn now on Saturday, and this is when Venus is going to station direct. And you can see even by noon Eastern time on Saturday, this Venus is already station direct. And so the moon's going to meet Venus. The moon has already met Mars by this point, who is on, really, there's a lot of output towards some sort of collective effort or some sort of group process that we're all feeling. And again, it depends on where Capricorn is in your chart, where you're going to see this expressed, the area of life that it's most likely going to be expressed. And so the moon is just going to, it's darker, but it also is very embodied as well, and also very serious. Like, we have some very mature and serious feelings with the moon in Capricorn, really getting down into the root system, really feeling into what it actually takes in order to accomplish something, to reach a goal, for a group of people to create something lasting. and responsibility. So the moon meeting Mars, and so there might be a flare emotionally, but I would say in this case it's also much more of a motivating factor in, you know, our emotions, right? And we know that feelings and emotions are really the currency of our of manifestation, right? It's we invest our energy, and what we get out of it is what we get out of that investment is really the power that generates everything. So there's just going to be, I think, a really kind of a serious tone, but also, like I said, very ambitious and a sense of a responsibility that we're all going to feel. And we're like, yeah, I know, you know, let's get it, right? Let's get this canoe outfitted. Let's get ready to make this move. And then meets Venus at the, right after it, you know, in the afternoon, into the evening on, Saturday as well. And you just find that the moon's going to make all of these connections to Uranus and Taurus. It's eventually going to meet in, you know, still the last degrees of Taurus, right? Let's see what else is going on. It meets, of course, there'll be a trine to Chiron. So Chiron comes back into at 9 to 10 degrees of, let's look at that, 9 to 10 degrees of Capricorn. We're in star seed activation, 9 to 10 degrees. We have 10 degrees is, right, the first star in the Lyran constellation that we utilize for these star seed markings. So there is, you know, we have to face our fear. And it's one thing when you're at the beginning of the journey and Mars is there and you're like, yeah, I'm ready. Well, at this point, there is something that we have to actually do, or at least be willing to outstretch the hand and trust the situation, right? If we don't take that step, or if we don't reach out our hand, or if we don't cross the line in some ways and be willing to offer ourselves in some sort of arrangement, there's not going to be any trust. Like if we don't allow to take, you know, the risk, there has to be calculated risk in order to really achieve something. And Lyran starseeds are really good at this because they are the ones that take the plunge anyway, because they have the Lyrans are the original blueprint for the humanoids in this galaxy, right? Lyran starseeds, anybody has Lyran starseed markings and traits, you know, you have the connection to the original humanoid blueprint. Like you've done it, you've been around the block, you've seeded so many others, the Lyrans have. And so the fearlessness, the leadership, the ambition is so accessible here. So when it comes into this square with Chiron, it's just kind of this little bit of a nudge in some ways of like, it's okay to allow these really emotional images of yourself that you've been adhering to this whole time. It's going to take, you know, it's just going to take a little courage and, you know, a willingness to trust and put your hand out so that you can transcend these triggers and to see things with a wider scope and a more abstract vision of who you are and who you can be, right? It's just this little nudge here, which is, I think, really important. And then you have the moon that will meet the direct Venus. Oh, this is lovely. 12 degrees of Capricorn. And I think this is an incredible, and this is, again, look at this. This is by the end of the day on Saturday, you get the moon and Venus together, and a very, there's a sense of nurturing along with a sense of responsibility and sensitivity. It's not so much sensitivity exclusively to the body or to resources, but there's a backup now of emotional sensitivity to these things too, to assist us in our exploration of how all of these things work, right? We want to understand how an ecosystem functions so that we can build one that is actually, or participate in harmoniously in one. Same thing with the economy. If we understand how an economy works, then we can make shifts, or we can align with shifts in the material world, Uranus and Taurus, which is a big deal. Uranus is really important right now. And so you're also going to, see that this is in trine to it right now, these two coming together. So when you understand how the economy works, when you understand how an ecosystem works, if you're willing to explore and go into the underlying mechanisms, and understand them, then it's going to be like a balance, or it's going to be a means to be stable. It's a stabilizing force, it feels like, to a place that's so unstable all the time, which is Uranus and Taurus, right? The money is unstable. Currency is unstable, right? Food is unstable. Supplies are unstable, right? The material world is unstable, right? Earthquakes, storms, right? All manner of changes in the climate and weather. These are all things that are unstable, that represent the objective world around us, because Uranus is there. And it's in this instability that triggers us to transform into beings that are able to cultivate and nourish that environment to grow what we want, right? It's not about controlling anything, but we do have to understand how it all works, and, and how it hasn't worked. And I just feel like the moon and Venus together at this point, tomorrow and Saturday, in a trine to Uranus, is what is allowing stabilization, and really kind of allowing us to be able to harness the Aquarian energy in order to maintain ourselves in what is otherwise a very disruptive experience pretty much all the time. I mean, no wonder everybody's just agitated all the time without some sort of really strong practice of grounding yourself and being present in your body and present in your actual reality, because it's just, it's this constant changing and uprooting. So that's a really very stabilizing aspect with these Venus, the moon, and Uranus on Saturday. And let's see here. Yeah, as we go into Sunday, the 30th, I mean, we're wrapping up the calendar month of January, and we haven't even gotten to Lilith yet. I'll show you that. So Sunday is when the sun and Uranus come into that square. So like I said, agitation, irritation, unexpected outbursts. The best thing you can do with the sun squaring Uranus is to find, if you have a routine in place, this is not a great time to be like scrambling to figure one out, or like, if you're brand new to meditation, this might be a good time to find a guided meditation or some sort of process, because this is just where, we are truly upended in some way. Ego battles with sun square Uranus, right? But if you can remain flexible, and especially the fact that the sun is in Aquarius, this is the territory of Uranus. If we can not only be flexible in these moments, but I would say find a stillness within our own self, right? Which is not very... It actually can be a lot easier than it seems with the sun in Aquarius, because the sun is at its detriment here. So it's not very strong. But what we can do is direct that sense of confidence and a sense of expression and authenticity and sovereignty into the social environment as a whole, and what it consists of, and find our inspiration from that resonance of the social environment, of civilization, of the people themselves, right? If we can tap into that and find our voice in that, again, it's going to cause a lot of agitation, irritation, frustration with this aspect. But what we can do is utilize it. I mean, again, these squares are challenges, they're conflicts, and there are frustrations just normally. And you can feel the tension building, and something very significant could very much pop at this time that really speaks to me, at least, the importance for not getting drawn into the drama of it, but finding a stillness instead of the drama, while things in the material world are moving around and shifting and glitching in and out, right? The awakening of the people, right? Not the pictures we're being presented, not all of the different voices of like the billions, the millions and of thousands, millions, whatever, of influencers. Everybody's got their perspective. Everything is shifting around. You can watch the narrative just shift. You just have to like pay attention to the overall trends and what you see more of all of a sudden, and you're like, I wonder what that's all about. It'll be very easy to get pulled into the drama with this, and the real challenge of this is to find that stillness. And again, here's Venus to assist in this process. Here's a moon in Capricorn to really ground us and make us emotionally like responsible and grown up about some things. Now, on Sunday, while, when this is happening, which is going to be in the afternoon, in the afternoon, let's see here. Yes. So this is pretty much down to the minute here. So 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sunday afternoon, you're going to see this coming into exact, but you're feeling it already, right? Especially as it gets closer, it's going to build and it's going to build. And every time there's a connection to Uranus from either the moon and with Venus, it's going to be felt even more. So what else is happening on Sunday? Well, the moon is going to meet retrograde Mercury. The moon is going to meet Pluto as well. And so this, oh, wow, it was one thing when Mercury and Pluto were together because it's a cognitive experience, or at least it's some sort of inner analysis with the mind. But when it's the moon that's meeting Pluto, I mean, it is the feelings that are just coming up. And this is a great segue actually to Black Moon Lilith's role over the weekend, because she's going to be in conjunction with fixed star Sirius. And we're going to look at that chart, number one, which is right here. And then we'll just take some time to go back over the star Sirius from an astronomy perspective, from a astrological, ancient astrology perspective, how they looked at the star Sirius, what it represented in ancient astrology, and then also to what, in terms of a star seed and an archetypal reference. So I am just for a minute kind of clearing out. Okay. Find the still in the chaos. That's for sure. Oh, Meg! Meow, meow. It's good to see you, Meg. And Alex K says woof, right? We got the dogs, we got the cats, we got everything. All the animals are represented. And that's a very Syrian thing, actually. These are such amazing little segues into these topics, guys. So first, let's talk about Lilith. So Lilith, true Lilith, right? And just as a review, right? What is Lilith? Black Moon Lilith is the space in between the Earth and the apogee of the moon's orbit around the Earth. And the apogee is the point that is furthest away from the planet that something else, an object, is orbiting around. So it's the furthest away in its orbit. The space in between is Black Moon Lilith. Now, Lilith represents a lot of different archetypes. Well, one archetype, and is a character in a lot of different historical, mythological, religious, and spiritual contexts. For the sake of astrology, Black Moon Lilith is something even deeper and less accessible than even the moon, representing our own feelings and our own subconscious. Black Moon Lilith is our connection to ancient wisdom, is the original blueprint of the feminine, is the Isis or Ishtar, right? Inanna, all of the Babylonian, Sumerian, Egyptian. And when we talk about Egyptian, let's talk about that in particular, because Sirius is so related to the Egyptian, everything about their cosmology and their astronomy is really related to Sirius. And so we would talk about Isis and Black Moon Lilith and being the original blueprint and the space that the space in which creation happens, right? And is not created. It's not the feminine that is created from anything. It exists. It's the feminine that exists on its own as its own entity, right? And this is why Black Moon Lilith is oftentimes, the part of ourselves that demands to be heard. Absolutely. And there's expulsion of some type or some sort of projection, and it's a demand to be heard, a demand to be seen, and a demand to be acknowledged, and it's often very primal and animalistic and stigmatized, and so we squash it. So in Cancer in general, where Lilith is, we're talking about protection, guardianship, mother and womb protection, right? This is very powerful. And Lilith is in the mid Cancer range during this weekend, which means that she's going to be in a conjunction with fixed star Sirius. So let's look at Sirius real quick. Let's just go over it real quick. So here's Canis Major, the constellation. And look, Sirius number 1, Sirius is the brightest star in our night sky. Okay, it's a big star. It's got a lot of mass. It's twinkles in a way that looks like it is a prism or multicolored, and it's because it's got so much mass and it's so hot and burns so brightly that it on the color spectrum it's towards the blue and white, and that's how stars are classified, spectral class. Their mass and their color. And their output of heat and energy is all related to each other. So the more mass they have, the brighter they are, the more heat they put out or more energy they put out. And then and that tends to be on the higher frequency end of the visible light spectrum. So blue, violet into white. Red stars, for instance, red dwarfs are way more numerous in the universe. More red stars than any because they live longer, right? But they're smaller, they have less mass, they're cooler, and they spin faster. So they flare a lot, which would make it interesting for life to develop on the surface. And so there's this idea with red dwarf stars that they're so numerous, but they would really keep an atmosphere from being created on a water planet if there was a planet in a habitable zone around it. But it would, so maybe living under the surface, possibly. So that's just an idea. I did some research on Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri when I was in school and taking cosmology and astrophysics. And so stellar physics was one of the, courses that I took. So Sirius is huge, right? And so very large, very, stable and very bright. And so there's, whatever habitable planets are around Sirius, it remains to be seen. But it's one of the major, quote unquote landmarks of the night sky. So, but it's in the throat of Canis Major, in the throat. This is really important. In the throat chakra, because Sirian starseeds, this is one of their primary, they resonate at the throat chakra and the sacral chakra, because the Sirians and the Sirian starseeds by default are capable of utilizing natural technology of vibration in order to manifest. And so the Sirian starseeds tend towards being shamans, they tend energy workers, the priests, the priestesses, and it's not so much the magicians, right? It's important to realize that. It's those who they're very strong guardians for the natural environment. It's protective, it's faithful, it's loyal, it's the dog star, right? Canis Major and in the throat chakra. So but there's something very particular about the Sirians where they've gone from not just communion, but to actually utilizing a technology, a natural technology in order to manifest and make change based on vibration. And, in shamanic technique, you are doing things that are chanting, you are dancing, which is also working with rhythm and vibration. Toning is really powerful in terms of like a physical sound vibration. Playing any kind of instrument, Syrian starseeds tend to be very into music and art, and they also tend to be very counterculture types of people because they are very insular and just like a shaman, right? They don't live with their community. They live on the outskirts because the capacity for them to cross the veil in order to do their healing work makes it very difficult for them to be in communion with, humans on a regular basis. So Syrian starseeds tend to have very insular, very tight-knit, but very small friend and family groups. They talk to animals, they talk to plants, and these are the people who, and these are the beings that I feel like, they're sixth density, right? They have the capacity to, like I said, utilize natural tech, but they may have mastered it, but they haven't necessarily gotten to like an Arcturian level yet, I would say. So their participation in Earth and in human development, I think, is still kind of precarious in terms of their introduction of some of these technologies and the ability to do it without how do I say this? Without humanity's consciousness capable of responsibly handling that at the time of Atlantis. So anyway, Sirius. This is where Black Moon Lilith is. So we're going to also expect during this time, as we go through the weekend and as she is in conjunction with Sirius, like at the point of the permanent darkness, which is the space in which to create something very protective. And when we get the new moon is very much involved with Lilith, Venus, and Uranus. And like I said, this is something that gets covered in the recordings, the forecast recordings that you'll have to check out. So what I want to bring attention to over the weekend is just the fact that Lilith is here in Cancer. So this is today on the 28th. If we go a day ahead, we'll see that, again, here's these trines with the moon and Venus with Uranus. We see a connection with the sun and Chiron, of course. Jupiter is opposite Draco this weekend. That's something else that I wanted to bring up. So that is a Draco marking, but it's opposite. So there is integrity, this uncompromising integrity with our relationship to source and divine inner vision that Jupiter's representing, that is really going to drive the Draco who haven't aligned with this part of themselves. It's just going to drive them insane. Okay, it is. That's all I can say, because this is alignment with God, source, the universe, and Jupiter is the advocate of, wherever you find Jupiter, right? And in Pisces, I mean, this is a spiritual leader, right? This is somebody who is here not only to represent their own spiritual nature, but to be a representative of and a leader and somebody that advocates and answers for and acts in the best interest of the spiritual community. And so this also is going to, you can see here that this is going to come into a sextile with the Capricorn moon, the darker Capricorn moon. And again, there's be mindful of receiving, and not only receiving, but feeling very the voice of God coming through. I know that seems crazy, but that is actually the Sabian symbol, is a veiled prophet speaking for God in a sextile to Jupiter in this position. Again, just know that whatever's coming through is going to drive the Draco nuts. And I would say especially the Draco who have not aligned themselves with their own karmic cleansing. because many Draco starseeds and Draco walk-ins even have come here in order to clear their own karma and participation, especially with the Lyrans too. Now, keep in mind, this is something that I recently heard somebody else talk about, and it made sense to. I never articulated it this way, but I always felt this, that the Draco and the reptilians are two different races, right? The Draco, Alpha Draconis, those are more like the dragon, right? Which makes sense, considering that the Draco constellation is a dragon. The reptilians are different. I think that there's a lot of reptilian races or groups of reptilians coming from Orion, personally, and I've heard other people talk about things in a way that kind of confirm this, at least for me, right? How are we ever going to confirm any of this until somebody shows up and says, yes, I am a being from this place? And even then, I mean, what can we do? There's no proof. So we all have to use our intuition. But in terms of what these aspects represent, I mean, this is, as long as your channels are open to the right place, and this is important to consider as well, then... and you're in alignment with exactly where you want to be and not anybody else's agenda, I feel like that this is going to be wildly supportive. And I say wildly just because it's going to be very... with the sun and coming into a square with Uranus by Sunday, again, this sextile I think is going to be very important to activate and invest these things in each other so that we know exactly where we each stand energetically, emotionally, and in our hearts. And Jupiter always is an advocate, and so it's going to be like, like I said, uncompromising faith at this point. It just depends on where your faith is placed, right? Like what Pisces represents to you. So, and then we have, like I said, we have Lilith here that is in conjunction with Sirius, and is going to be actually, if we go a couple hours ahead here on Saturday, we're going to see that the moon comes into an opposition directly with, and you can see how the square now is getting exact. The square with Mars and Chiron is starting to build, and that will be a number of days, of course, but it's starting to build. But you do see here that if we go forward through till Sunday morning, right, you see that this is exact. So it's here in conjunction with Sirius, and the moon is not quite in conjunction with Vega, but pretty darn close. It's past Venus at this point, and it feels to me like there is such an instinctual need to act from, or to express oneself, or to be heard from this deep place, right? And so if we let's go into the ancient astrology aspects of Sirius that I just want to share with you. So what I'll do is bring up, well, you can just kind of take a look at the chart, and I'm going to read a little bit to you. So Alpha Canis Majoris, or fixed star Sirius, right, is it's huge. It's the brightest star in our sky. So now when it comes to Egypt, Jupiter, speaking of Jupiter, was conjunct Sirius during the solar eclipse on 51 BC, which was the day that Cleopatra's father died. So and the ancient Egyptian, that's just a little bit of trivia, I guess, I don't know. The ancient Egyptian calendar was based on lunar cycles, just like the Chinese calendar is, and based on the heliacal, heliacal rising of Sirius, which means that when Sirius rose in the morning before dawn, that was the beginning of, that was their signal that the Nile was soon going to flood, and that their lands were going to be nourished and fertilized and prepared for planting. So Sirius is a big part of the Egyptian and references Isis. So, but in terms of ancient astrology, when Sirius was prominent in the chart, you're getting the nature of Jupiter and Mars, which is very interesting considering how Sirius in the zodiacal degree of Cancer and the constellation of the dog, which very, it's very protective and loyal, but you do see a sense of ambition and pride and grandeur in some ways. These are all these like astrology, fixed star astrology aspects. And a great place to get these little, these paragraphs about all of these stars is Astrology King. It's really astrologyking.com, right? And you can, it's a great resource for this kind of stuff. If you just want to like go through and be like, So there are specific things about Sirius that are, it's really well placed for military, for civil servants, commercial enterprise or matters of government, promise of giving extensive wealth. So this is promising fame and honors and riches if it's well connected. Now, Black Moon Lilith is not well connected, right? Because she is primal. She is whole in herself. She is the feminine, and specifically at Sirius, she is the darkness. She represents the space, right? The infinite space and the infinite wisdom that is also there, but truly the core of all that there is. And you could almost say it's kind of like a black sun. And it says when Sirius is in conjunction with the sun, as it is at the signing of the Declaration of Independence for the United States, it's will be found to be the case with numerous important and famous personalities, and the rise in station is made possible by protection from people of influence. Is it possible that the birth of this nation, perhaps being at the sun at Sirius, was maybe looked after? Some people do in the New Age community do talk about how it was Saint Germain was somehow involved in, as somebody was a walk-in, maybe, or reincarnated as him. But I would just say that without that, they knew, the founders knew, and they were in the mystery schools, so they knew how important Sirius was. And that's why they made sure that they signed that document as a binding agreement when the sun was at Sirius. Okay, so there is a warning that this is immense creative talents and inner power. So you can see how the Sirian starseed aspect is brought into this, and the shamanic aspect. This is, not all shamans are good, right? They don't actually always help people. Sometimes shamans use their sorcery to curse people or to do things that are not in alignment with, the highest good, but people do it. And so there's immense power, but it needs to be managed safely. And if it's harshly aspected in your chart, Sirius, it can show truly a psychotic person who is a menace to themselves and their community. So it really depends on how it's aspected and how people work with it. So it's the brightest of all stars, the Prince of Princes. Who does that sound like? It's just, it rules, that's funny, rules the nipple of the right breast in the human body. That's entirely so specific, which is very strange to me. So that's what we're looking at when it comes to ancient astrology and the fixed star Sirius. So we know that it holds a lot of prominence. It has an incredible amount of power, inner power, that needs to be managed by a firm and responsible hand. And with the moon in Capricorn, that's exactly, I think, what we need. Because if it's just Lilith left to her own devices, this is like the darkest sorcery you could imagine. Or it's the most powerful shamanic expression that you can imagine, right? Guardianship and protection, all of those Cancerian elements, and feminine, like deep, divine, sacred, feminine mother protection, right? But it could go sideways. So the moon in Capricorn is really about feeling into the responsibility that we have to not just throw the baby out with the bathwater here, or to we don't want to completely destroy everything that has been built up so far. This is very easy to do with this type of transit, or even just this placement with Black Moon Lilith at Sirius, right? It could, but the moon, especially with Venus involved and Mercury meeting Pluto and giving us some really deep insight to these deeper, more powerful processes at work, and the moon in Capricorn opposite of it, there's a responsibility and a sense of perspective here that will allow us to be like, yes, that is old, that's done, we can get rid of that, but oh, look, we excavated something here that actually is still valuable and means something to our culture and to our society or to our structures. So we don't want to, it's like going on an archaeological dig and being like, well, that's not what we do anymore, or that's not relevant to now, so we'll just get rid of it. No, we want to know, we want to have an emotional and feeling-based sensitivity to what is actually still valuable so that we can learn from it, right? That we can see it for what it is. This is important, again, because the Sun and Uranus in this square this weekend is just going to be, it's going to be very easy to get pulled into other people's drama and the eruption and the just the unsuspected or very sudden, type of bomb going off. And I hate to even use that word because, who knows, right? But I'd say pray for people. I'd say pray for that trucker convoy, because boy, is that a target right now in terms of being the next J6. So that would be my suggestion, my friends. And anybody else in your life or anybody that you... finding my still has been a challenge these days. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think, and it's just going to get more so. It really is. And so, and this is the perfect opportunity here for something like Lilith at the conjunction of Sirius to just be like, you know what? I am going to go full Kali on everybody's ass here. So we don't want to, you don't want to do that necessarily. And the moon in opposition to this, especially in conjunction with Vega, is like, listen, we are responsible, and we're going to feel into the responsibility that we all have towards not just ourselves, but our impact on the matrix of reality that we're part of. And there are things that are embedded in our own historical and cultural and literal in the ground, in those ways that can give us insight on what we can do to improve, what we can do to change things in a positive way. Because the actual reality itself is shifting, and we may find ourselves being very agitated as a result. This is going to be a very interesting weekend to be going into a balsamic moon phase. Finding the still is... the supreme challenge. And so hopefully, as I go through today and I am continuing to record the astrology forecast for all the signs, I'll take some breaks, and I really would love to be able to share with you my previous skill set teaching Hatha yoga and go over tree pose and like walk through it with you and talk about it from a physical but also from a spiritual and energetic perspective as well. You can certainly go on YouTube and find thousands of videos of people teaching and doing demonstrations, and that's great. And I would recommend that you find things that work for you. Remember, or maybe not remember, Hatha yoga is the first rung on the ladder. It gets your physical body prepared to handle the upgrade in energy. And I think that it's so valuable in and of itself, and there are certain types of asanas or postures, just like Vrikshasana, the tree pose, that is going to really assist, and the types of pranayama. I went over that in a different video, right? And I can share all kinds of things like that. I never went into teaching yoga classes because I couldn't stand it. And I was trained briefly in India as well. So. And my teacher didn't pull any punches around yoga in the West. And it was very confirming about why I didn't want to enter into that. And that's no disrespect to anybody who teaches yoga or has a strong yoga practice. I do as well, and I have. So, but I have some very strong feelings about how it has been exploited and utilized in the West, and the pitfalls of it. So, but what it does provide, I think, is really important right now. And so I want to be able to share that whole knowledge base with y'all. So that'll be something that it'll definitely get posted on Telegram, in the Telegram chat. So if you're not over there, you can link to that from the description box. But I might put it on BitChute and YouTube as well. We'll see how it goes, guys. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Have a fantastic weekend, whatever you end up doing. Please be safe. Exercise some extra caution with all of these Uranus transits happening. And with so much, like, really, really building, a lot of tension building, just be safe, exercise extra caution, find your stillness in the chaos and in the storm, and whatever it is you need to do, don't be, allow yourself to trust and in some ways, and to maybe approach and push through your own fear when it comes to stepping out of old identities. Maybe there are things that are going to trigger us in terms of our identity and how we feel about ourselves that can be seen in a whole new light if we allow it. And this is where big breakthroughs come in. Quantum leaps can come in too, especially when we're talking about Aquarius and Uranus. And we'll be together on Monday. We'll do a transmission, and keep an eye out for the horoscopes, or the forecasts, I should call them. I hate calling them horoscopes, but that's what they are. So, and keep an eye out for the forecasts for your sign. And I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Everything you need is in the description box below. I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in a reading. I am offering a sale on starseed readings right now. If you're really interested in about that, don't hesitate to reach out. My email's in the description box as well. So I'm going to check in the chat real quick to see what's going on. Everything looks good to me. All right, guys, I love you. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Don't forget to get on Telegram so we can all stay in touch with each other and share our experiences. Have a blessed day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.